The Angels are rumored to be, quote unquote, expressing interest in Tim Anderson, and Angel fans' reactions are horribly mixed, right? So today we're weighing the pros and cons of Tim Anderson possibly coming to the Halos, and we're going to share our final verdict on if the Halos should do it or not. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to give back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Angel content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. We love 5 stars. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe to become a Locked On everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come on over to YouTube, leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started.
Thank you for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, it's our second off season here at Locked On Angels, and we've been covering all the conversations that you want to have in terms of what's going on with the Angels during the hot stove. And things have certainly heated up a little bit, considering that we now have a manager and the coaching staff is kind of being built out. Hey, on today's show, one of the things we like to do in the off season is a little show called Making the Case. And last year, we made the case for the Angels to sign Xander Bogaerts and Kodai Senga, both guys who didn't end up signing with the Angels, but we still made the case before they signed with the Padres and the Mets, respectively. Now, normally, Mike, you and I pick guys that we would like to see come to the Angels. However, the rumors right now are that the Angels have expressed interest in Tim Anderson, and so we felt it was important to do a deep dive into Tim Anderson's career, kind of weigh the pros and cons on today's show. Yeah. And then you, our Locked On Everydayers, you can draw your own conclusions after you hear the pros and cons, and we'll also share our final verdict. Mike, why don't you get us started with the pros?
Now, here's what's really interesting about Tim Anderson, John. The stats that I'm about to share with you are actually really sexy. Like, these are really good stats.
They're good numbers.
From 2019 to 2020, here's Tim Anderson's slash line: 318 batting average, 347 on base, 474 slugging, 820 OPS. He has a 122 OPS plus, 22% better than league average over that time. He was a 2020 Silver Slug Award winner, 2019 batting title for the best batting average, 335, and 2 All-Star nods, one in 2021 and one in 2022. He was the starting second baseman for Team USA in the 2023 World Baseball Classic. And Johnny, we know that Anderson had the worst season of his career in 2023, but is this who Anderson is, or is this just an outlier? Let's dig a little bit deeper. Why don't you start us with the WBC?
I think that's a big question, Mike, is this an aberration on his career, or is this now who Tim Anderson is? And I think that's the big question that we need to answer. So to start things out, the WBC 2023, of course, right before the season started, he went 6 for 18 in 21 plate appearances, 6 hits, 5 runs, 1 double, 1 triple, 5 RBIs, 2 walks, 7 Ks, 1 stolen base. His slash line, 333 average, 381 on base, 500 slugging, and 881 OPS. Now, that's a small sample size, but coming into the WBC, that was typical for Tim Anderson in this situation. And so for him to come into the season, you kind of thought, yeah, he's going to keep that up as 2023 gets started. And what about before he went down with the knee sprain? He missed about 3 weeks of playing time with this knee sprain. It was a MCL injury. He started out really well in 11 games from the beginning of the season until April 10th. He went 14 for 47 and 49 plate appearances, 9 runs, 14 hits, 5 doubles, Mike, in that time, 4 RBIs, 2 walks, 10 Ks. Again, very similar to what he did in the WBC. He hit for an average of 298, a 327 on base, 404 slugging, and a 731 OPS. Again, that's a very small sample size, but it seemed like Anderson was continuing to do what he does well. He hits for average. He gets on base because he gets hits, and he gets driven in. He scores runs. So what indicators might show us that Tim Anderson's 2023 was more of a blip than the truth of who he is? Well, Mike, we're going to use a little stat that you and I have used before called BABIP,
right,
which is batting average on balls in play. Here's why this is important. BABIP accounts for the quality of contact a hitter makes with the ball with their bat. It also accounts for the opposing team's defense and also luck, because sometimes a ball bloops in, and even though the expected batting average on it is like 0.10, sometimes it falls for a hit, and that's just the way things work. So BABIP accounts for all of those things. It's a good indicator that a player is making good contact on the ball. If a hitter has maintained a certain BABIP throughout his career and it suddenly changes, like for the good or for the worse, that's probably more of the aberration, and it's more likely the hitter is going to return to their career average. So BABIP is important because where a guy has been in his career is probably where he will be, avoiding a spike or a big dip. And 2023, Anderson certainly had a dip in his BABIP. That's a lot of ips. But Mike, talk about Tim Anderson's BABIP in 2023 and then his career average.
Yeah, 2023, his batting average for balls in play was 323, John. His career average, his career BABIP, 348. So it did go down, but it's still a really strong number. So here's context, all right? So consider Mike Trout. He has a 346 career BABIP. Trout has quality contact when he's at the plate. And then for more context, consider David Fletcher, everybody's favorite Angel, right? He has a 301 career BABIP. A lot of Fletcher's hits have come on luck. They've fallen in. They've been bloops. He's swinging at flies, and suddenly he hits one of those flies. Yes, right? And so that's how he's dropped it in. So we can assume that Tim Anderson will return to his near 348 BABIP because that's more likely who he is, Johnny, and it makes 2023 the outlier.
Yeah, in fact, in 2023, his year BABIP, his season BABIP, was really tanked by his month of May, which was a 304. And then June, Mike, his BABIP was 207. And remember, 300 is like, okay, that's like an average BABIP. And so for him to be at 207 is just awful. But the reason why May and June tanked him is because look at the way it was from July onward. In July, his BABIP was 355, and his batting average for the month of July was 292. Then in August, listen to this. This is a great example of why BABIP is important. His BABIP was 364. So balls being put in play were usually hit for about 364 for a hit, but his batting average was 219. Wow. That's the definition of bad luck right there. Yes. That means he's hitting the ball really hard, hitting line drives, and he hits it right at somebody. Yeah. Don't you hate when that happens, when you're like, oh, that's a hit. Oh,
or it gets taken away, or a great dive or something like that, right?
Yes, exactly. And then in September and October, his BABIP was 354 and his average was 271. So he finished the season on pretty good terms, Mike. Other than August, where the average was 219, he's hitting the ball like he normally does in his career, which has led to a lot of his success. Mike, he expressed a willingness to move to second base, which we all consider a pro because we want to see Zach Neto at shortstop. And Anderson is not really the Gold Glove shortstop that you would want. So he said, here's a quote here. He said, really, at this point, it doesn't matter. I'm a shortstop, a second baseman, Anderson said in an interview with MLB.com's Scott Merkin. It's whatever to allow my career to keep going. I'm not going to wrestle with the team that I'm this or I'm that. It's just an honor and a blessing to fit in any lineup as a starter, considering how hard this game is. Short would be my first choice, but I also understand how older guys are viewed now that I'm stepping into that phase, which sucks and it's different. I just want to keep continuing to build on what I started and get back to what I used to be.
Now, here's what's really important. We talk about all of the hitting and that he possibly could return to that because all indications is that he could return to that. Here's what I think the Angels are really looking at. And it's the fact that he probably won't cost too much.
Mm-hmm.
He's a cheap bounce back candidate. MLB Trade Rumors says it seems like a lock that Anderson and his reps at Excel will pursue a 1-year contract this winter in hopes that Anderson can play well and then be lined up for a more lucrative, longer-term deal next season. Johnny, if the Angels can lock him up for a cheap cost and he ends up rebounding and becoming the Tim Anderson that he was before 2023, I think they could really, really win in signing him. He made $12.5 million in 2023, but if he's coming off a really bad year and he's been down, how much do you think he'll cost in 2024?
I could see maybe at lowest $6 million, Mike. I mean, that's pretty low. I could see $8 million, and I think a ceiling would be $10 million. That's where I would start to go, you could probably spend that money elsewhere and use it more wisely. But if they can get him on the cheap, especially considering he was set up to make $14 million with the White Sox and they bought him out for $1 million out of that last year of his contract. So again, 12.5 last year for the performance he had, and he's looking to bounce back with the team and have a prove it year to prove that he's still Tim Anderson. I think if you can get him in the single digits in terms of millions, again, 6 to 8, that's a steal for Tim Anderson. So again, I think it proves that there's some pros here when it comes to Tim Anderson, and the fact that it seems like all indications are he's going to bounce back and he could come on the cheap as well. So now that we've talked about the pros, we're going to talk about the cons. And coming up on Locked On Angels, is Tim Anderson just more drama for the Angels? Do the Angels need more drama, and do they need to sign Tim Anderson? We're going to get into the cons and give you our final verdict in just a minute.
Johnny, how good was it to see the San Francisco 49ers win 34-3?
They needed that one, man. And
they needed that win.
That bye week could not have come at a better time last week.
Right. And they're 6-3. The Jaguars are 6-3. So it was a good team that they beat, and they just desperately needed that. And Brock Purdy looked like Brock Purdy again, and he had Deebo Samuel back. Johnny, I would have been willing to put down $5 on the 49ers.
Heck
and
yeah.
If I did, I would have won $150 with FanDuel, who is sponsoring our show today. Locked On Angels is brought to you by FanDuel, and you can get in on all of the NFL action this season with FanDuel. They're America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers like you can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. So I think I'm going to try this, John. I think I'm going to put $5 down on the Niners and see if I can win $150. Like, that would be great. That'd be great. I could use $150. I got to buy your Christmas present, right? I'm not spending $150 on you, but that's $150 for you if your team wins. And so if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, today's the day. Now's the time to get on all of the action. App's easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Kick off the NFL season the right way. Once again, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel is the official partner of the NFL.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Hey, Locked On Everydayers, don't forget that we're here every Monday through Friday covering all the hot stove news, covering all the coaching staff hires that the Angels are making, and of course, any free agents or trades that are made with the Angels. We're covering all the breaking news here on Locked On Angels. Whether you're watching for the episode or there is breaking news and you're looking for our initial reactions, it's all right here on YouTube. You can check us out. Get our initial reactions on social media at Locked On Angels on Twitter, at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. You'll be able to find our initial thoughts for any breaking news. Again, join us every Monday through Friday during this hot stove season because we're here covering the Halos just for you.
John, one of my favorite things about hosting this show with you is watching how people will live comment as we talk on this show. And so I'm assuming that right now in the comments on YouTube is a bunch of people going, yeah, those are the pros, but what about this? What about that? What about, okay, we're getting to it right now. Here's the cons, right? Here's the cons of bringing Tim Anderson to the Angels in 2024. That 2023 season was a big, right?
Yeah.
Woof.
Stinky.
It was terrible, right? Anderson's weighted runs created plus was 60.
Yes.
Remember, 100 is average, right?
League average.
He was He was 60. It was the lowest of any qualified hitter in baseball in 2023. Now, the metrics indicate that he will return or could return to who he used to be, but that bad season, just offensively, just as he was on the field, not even talking about off the field stuff, on the field, has left a lot of fans like, oh man, I think that's why Angel fans are going, I just don't think that that's smart. And then Johnny, one of the things that not many people are talking about, but it really was something that Anderson struggled with, was his speed. Like he slowed down, and maybe the knee injury had a piece to that, but Anderson had the slowest sprint speed of his career at 27.2 miles per hour. This put him in the 46th percentile of qualified players, all of the qualified players. His lowest was the 74th percentile in 2021, and his highest was the 92nd percentile in 2020. So he was just slow. And again, maybe it was the ongoing knee injuries. And Johnny, he's getting a bit older. He'll be 31 next June. So there is a lot of concern about Tim Anderson on the field offensively, and also if he can still be that quick, speedy base runner and that quick defender at second base.
I will say, like, 42nd or 46th percentile is not a bad place to be. Like, it's not the best, it's not the worst either. But Mike, when you consider how dramatic a fall that is from even just last year, or again in 2021, he was in the 74th percentile, 92 in 2020, like you said, that just considering that big drop off, I think it has a lot to do with that knee issue, which also he attributes to his struggles at the plate this last season too. So if that knee is not feeling good, that could be a big detriment to Tim Anderson.
Well, and it wasn't necessarily the knee with Albert Pujols, but we experienced this as Angel fans when Pujols didn't have legs under him. He couldn't hit.
The plantar fasciitis. That really messed him up.
And so that's got to affect Tim Anderson. The question is, do we want to put ourselves through that again? I don't know if we want to put ourselves through that again, right?
Right.
Johnny, what do you think? What do you think the plan would be if the Angels did sign Tim Anderson?
Yeah, that's another con, I think, because if Anderson's going to be at second base, obviously he's willing to move there. Zach Neto can play shortstop every day. He can back up Zach Neto at shortstop when he needs a day off. But what becomes of somebody like Brandon Drury, who had great offensive production from the second base spot in the American League? Does this express an interest on the Angels' part to move Drury? Do they want to trade him in the last year of his contract and maybe get some pieces back? And Mike, I feel confident in saying the consensus among Angel fans is that they'd rather have Drury than Anderson, even if it is a 1-year deal. But the Drury move, or I should say the Anderson move, the signing, might move Drury to more first base, which is where he also played last year. But then does that displace Shawnuel, or does Shawnuel have to sit against lefties because he's a lefty bat? It also kind of makes you wonder about Rengifo. Are they considering trading Rengifo while his value is highest, coming off that hot second half he had in 2023? And he does have more years of control, so they could get something probably pretty good for Rengifo and even Drury, because Drury's value is at an all-time high, even though he's only got 1 year left on his contract. There's teams out there that would snatch him up in a heartbeat to come be their utility guy or even their second baseman. But the problem I have with this is that you want to see Drury at second base. You want his bat in the lineup. And then with Rengifo, you and I have argued a whole bunch that he needs consistent playing time, because when he does, that's when the bat gets hot for Luis Rengifo. That's why he had a great second half before he got hurt with that bicep tear. He had a great second half because he was in there every single day. Now, it was out of necessity because he was pretty low on the depth chart. But they started him every single day. Eventually, he was leading off, and then he found himself in the middle of the order. And so he was playing everywhere. He was hitting everywhere. And when he was in there every single day, it's 2 years worth of data now that if Rengifo's in there consistently, he does really well. He struggles with only playing every so often. So it really has a question of, do they want to trade Drury? Maybe do they want to trade Rengifo? Perhaps you can get some value out of Drury now and sign Tim Anderson on the cheap to play that second base position. But again, I feel like Angel fans are more into seeing Drury play over somebody like Tim Anderson.
Yeah. Johnny, I think the biggest issue, though, is the drama. There's been a lot of
Yeah.
off-field drama, a lot of on-field issues with Tim Anderson. There was reported issues in the clubhouse. Remember the fight with Jose Ramirez?
The glass jaw of Tim Anderson.
He lost, John. He lost that fight.
Down goes Anderson. Down goes Anderson.
And then we know there's been stories about his personal life. He's dealt with having a baby with someone else's wife,
someone other than his own wife.
Someone that that's what it was.
Yeah.
I'm causing more drama.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was just it's a mess. And the big question is, do we want another Anthony Rendon? Like, do we want another bad clubhouse person? Can we put these two in the same clubhouse? Now, I will say Anthony Rendon made a huge donation recently to Bo Porter's nonprofit and scholarships. I think it was a school that he does, and he donated like $300,000. So I think that's a good sign, right? That's a good sign that maybe Rendon's turning the corner. But there is like, are you gonna throw some broccoli in this delicious soup? I don't know if unless you like broccoli, but are you gonna throw that into this? Because Anderson, like Rendon, they play really well. They're really good, but gosh, can you put up with the attitudes? Can you put up with the drama? Do you want to deal with some of that stuff? And Johnny, there's been a lot of conversation about if really Anderson is wanting to play baseball, if it's his first priority, right? And that's the conversation that's been connected to Anthony Rendon as well.
He's another guy who is really good at baseball and doesn't want to be, I guess you could say, kind of like Rendon, where it's like, I can do it. It's fine. But honestly, Anderson wanted to play basketball, and then he had a leg break on both of his legs playing basketball, and he switched to baseball in high school. And now here we are, him playing baseball. It's like, does he really love the game? And do we want more of that?
Sure.
Like we already have with Rendon. Mike, I believe that Tim Anderson, if he comes to the Angels, will be misunderstood. Here's what I mean by that.
Okay.
He is a vocal and passionate guy. He really does take pride in performing well, and he takes responsibility when he doesn't. But Mike, that kind of outspokenness always gets misinterpreted by fans. And as I was like perusing like forums and Reddit of White Sox fans, they honestly seem like 50-50 on a lot of what Tim Anderson had to say to the media and in the press, where it was like, I can't believe he would go and say that. And other guys going, well, I get where he's coming from. Split right down the middle. And Mike, if that's not the kinds of conversations that you and I have been having for the last year about this team and the people on the team and who's saying what, where it's right down the middle of like, I can't believe they went and said this. And then there's other people going, well, hold on. Maybe they're just trying to say this. That's going to be a whole other issue.
We've had enough of that
with Tim Anderson. And then Mike, is this a scenario of from the frying pan into the fire with Tim Anderson? Because a lot of White Sox fans really attribute Anderson's issues on the field with the fact that the way the White Sox are ran, it's kind of like playing for a disaster and a dumpster fire of a franchise, but aren't the Angels also poorly ran and a dumpster fire of a franchise? Like, everybody's saying, you know what? I think a change of scenery is going to be good for Anderson, but is Anaheim the right change of scenery when it kind of looks a lot like Chicago, Mike? I just don't know if that's a good move at the end of the day.
Interesting thought. Yeah, because we don't know. We don't know what this team is going to be like in 2024. Ron Washington brings a whole lot of good news and good culture, right? Crossing our fingers, but that doesn't mean that it's going to happen. And there are still a lot of issues. And so do you want to add an issue to a lot of issues? That's the cons. And I think that's why a lot of fans are like, I don't want this at all.
All right, Mike, we're getting to our final verdicts here. But before we get to that, I reached out to Nick Morosky, who used to host Locked On White Sox. Now he hosts Good Guys Talk Back, which is a play on Good Guys Wear Black. And he actually reached out to me to find out about Matt Wise and Marcus Timms. And so I shared some words of wisdom, if you will, with Nick.
Hey, that's a whole episode right there, Johnny.
No kidding. And so I reached out to Nick this time, and Nick has the best Chicago accent in the world. He's on his show. He went, I talked to John Frisch, and and man, I love it so much. So check out Good Guys Talk Back, because they know what they're talking about when it comes to the White Sox. But I asked him, can you just give me some insight on Tim Anderson and just let me know, as a diehard fan like you, what you witnessed? And here's what Nick had to say. In my opinion, Tim Anderson's issues stemmed from the off-field drama and a, quote, heavy is the head that wears the crown scenario. Lots of rumors circulated that TA had an affair and got a woman pregnant. The rumors were everywhere. When they lost Jose Abreu, Tim Anderson became the elder statesman and assumed leader, but I don't think he could handle it or wanted it. There was a time in the not-so-distant past where he was a starting shortstop in the All-Star game, batting titles, cover of video games, national commercials, and he openly talked about wanting to be the face of baseball. Be careful what you wish for. I think he's had a lot going on in his personal life, and he's put a ton of pressure on himself to live up to his professional reputation. I don't think he'll ever come close to winning a Gold Glove at shortstop and could probably benefit from a change to second base. But he definitely needed a change of scenery in my mind. When he was good, he's driving the ball to right center and taking a pitch right back up the middle. It seemed like he was pressing a lot this past year, and his lack of power was probably the result of trying to be something he's not. He should have been dropped in the lineup long before it actually happened, but our manager is horrible. So those were wise words from Nick from Good Guys Talk Back. But again, Mike, I think the idea of heavy is the head that wears the crown. I think that makes a lot of sense when it comes to Tim Anderson. And from somebody who watches the White Sox on a daily basis, I thought Nick's insight was really interesting there. What do you think?
Yeah, super good insight. I just think that, man, talk about Ron Washington having to deal with the Anthony Rendon situation. And my opinion is that that's the first conversation he needs to have. So then having Tim Anderson come into this situation as well puts Ron Washington in another position where he's not just going to have to manage the skills and the abilities of this baseball team. He's got to manage the personalities. And I get it. I get you're managing personalities anywhere you go, but I would rather lean in the direction of let's start with abilities, let's start with skill, and then let's figure out the personalities. Johnny, if I had to give a verdict for this, putting Tim Anderson, in the same room with Anthony Rendon, I just don't think is wise. And I was going to say putting him in the same room with Mike Trout, I just don't think is wise. I know they played on the WBC team together, and it seemed like he was doing pretty well there. I just don't know if this is a risk I would be willing to take. It feels like the Angels of the last few years. We're making this move, right? This almost feels like a Billy Epler move, right? It's the Matt Harvey move, right? It's going and getting somebody that maybe he could be good. And I know that he didn't fall completely off a cliff, but he had a terrible year. I just don't think that this is a smart move. And I think that there are better moves that the Angels could make. They might have to spend a little bit more money. Again, you're not a small market team, so stop acting like you're a small market team. Go and spend the money. If you're going to get a second baseman and you want somebody of quality, go and get a really good second baseman and figure it out. Or let Brandon Drury play there and let Louis Rengifo play third and figure it out this season with those guys. So, Johnny, I'm going to give a verdict, and my verdict is no, absolutely not.
A pass.
Yes. Yeah. Guilty.
Hard pass.
Mike, what about you?
Listen, as I was going through the stats and I realized like Tim Anderson is going to perform next season. And I'm confident in saying that. But to me, to add a potential problem to a long list of problems that you already have in your organization in terms of, you need starting pitching and guys have been moving all over the field. And Rendon is another situation that Ron Washington is going to have to deal with. Look, I think that there's nobody better to handle a situation where Tim Anderson comes in than Ron Washington. I think that he might actually thrive under Ron Washington. I think that we could add that to a list of pros, right? That he might have improved defense and really like playing for Wash. Yeah. But at the end of the day, you're right. Behaving like a small market team is going, hey, let's take a flyer on Tim Anderson. And maybe he heats up and then you can trade him at the deadline and you get some pieces back. So you've traded Drury and you got pieces, and then you get Anderson good again and you trade him and get some pieces back. Yeah, maybe that's the strategy here. Maybe that's kind of what the Angels are aiming for. But Mike, if the Angels are going to pretend to be a small market team and sign Tim Anderson because he's going to be affordable and they're hoping for a bounce back, well, then what happens? Like I said, do you trade him at the deadline? What's the goal here? I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like there's lots of depth out there. There's lots of guys who can play second base. You could make trades for. I know Jonathan India seems to be on the table too, and that's somebody that I was excited about at the trade deadline before he got hurt. So I just think that there's better options. To me, I think I'm going to pass on Tim Anderson. If it does happen, great. I'll enjoy it, and I expect him to do well, and I expect him to perform. But I just don't think it's something that the Angels need to do. It seems like they could better use that money elsewhere. It seems like they would be better suited to find somebody else to play second base if Drury is not part of the equation.
So what about you? What do you think? Locked On Everydayers. You can comment below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're on the audio side, jump over. We would love to hear from you. Johnny, if they want to talk to us on social media, can you tell them how they can find us?
Yeah, get at us at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. If you have thoughts on today's show, we always post the show on Twitter and Instagram. You can comment below the preview and the link there and get in on the conversation. And again, if you're watching or listening, come on over to YouTube, get in the comments. Let us know what you would do. Do the pros outweigh the cons, or do the cons outweigh the pros? What do you guys think about Tim Anderson and the Angels? Mike and I are both a pass, but we want to hear from you as well. Hey, Mike, what do we have on deck for tomorrow's show?
Well, make sure you make us your first listen, because we're going to talk about Shohei Ohtani. And Johnny, we're going to give 5 reasons why the Angels make sense for a Shohei Ohtani return. I can't wait for that conversation. Join us tomorrow for Locked On Angels.
I love it. I love it. We did the 5 challenges for Ron Washington yesterday. 5 reasons why Shohei should return to the Angels. Going to be a good conversation, and we hope you'll join us for that. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us. Again, get in our comments. Let us know what you think about Tim Anderson and the Angels, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.
A Tim Anderson signing feels like there's no plan.
Right.
And that's why I don't like it, right?
No plan. No plan.
No plan.